Hello, I'm Chris Baynham-Hughes. I'm part of Red Hat's Open Innovation Labs team covering EMEA. We work with our customers to accelerate transformation through the successful adoption of cloud-native practices and technology. As part of delivering that vision, our residencies build long-lived, cross-functional product teams capable of delivering sustained and competitive advantage to their own organisation. We're going to kick off today by examining an opinionated view of team organisational structure that we see adopted by high-performing companies in the platform era. We'll take a look at the teams, how teams interact with each other, and discuss how that evolves. This is all based upon the outstanding work of Matthew Skelton and Manuel Pais, put forward in their book, Team Topologies. If you've not read it already, then my advice would be to put it at the top of your reading list. Once we've got the fundamentals in place, we'll look at how we can catalyse adoption of this structure. I'll share our experience of introducing this approach to organisations and what we do to catalyse the change. And since we've just got 2 weeks to go in the Six Nations rugby tournament, it seemed like the perfect vehicle to tell the story. So we'll take a look at how the great game gives us a blueprint for success. How this translates into this. But first, let's look at the basis for this thinking. Let's ask ourselves the question: how can we optimize our teams for flow, accelerate delivery, and ensure the customer centricity that we seek? To answer this question, we need to learn a lesson that Melvin Conway offered up over half a century ago. Conway's law states that organizations which design systems are constrained to produce designs that are copies of the communication structures of these organizations. This goes a long way to explaining why siloed organizations will tend to produce monolithic applications. Teams work within what they can control. If collaboration is made too difficult due to communication structures, then they'll simply operate without interaction and likely create monoliths. So why is this a bad thing? Well, tightly coupled monolithic applications make reuse, extension, or change more difficult and slower. Levels of duplication and wastage are developed within the software. This harms organizational agility. Now, if you'd like to understand how we build organizational agility, then please join me at 11 a.m. on the keynote track tomorrow, where I'll be looking at how high-performing cloud-native organizations are winning in the platform era. In Team Topologies, Matthew and Manuel identify 4 team types and 3 interaction modes. The 2 key team types are platform teams and stream-aligned teams. Platform teams are responsible for providing the platform. They provide the abstraction layer, self-service creation, and common components, data sets and configurations that enable organizational agility. Their customers are the stream-aligned teams. Now, stream-aligned teams go by various names out there. They are your DevOps product teams that create differentiated value in the form of applications. They represent the line of business, and their customers are the end users of the application, be they internal or external to your business. To help illustrate all the team types and how they interact, I'm going to use the structure of a rugby team. Now, I appreciate that rugby is a mystery to many, so let's quickly cover the basics of a rugby team. On the pitch, a rugby team consists of 15 players. As you can see by the way the positions are laid out in this picture, we can broadly divide these 15 into forwards and backs. However, if we look more closely, we find that there are additional sub-roles for some of these players. So for example, the front row, numbers 1, 2 and 3, are highly specialist roles. So much so that if through injury a team runs out of players registered to play in that position, then this part of the game becomes uncontested, so player safety is ensured. The back row forwards and halfbacks are also a team within the team. They play a pivotal role in linking the work of the backs to the work of the forwards, and vice versa. Now, I appreciate that to anybody not familiar with rugby, and even to those that are, this can be confusing, But fear not, we'll now dive into the details and link this all to how we deliver software. Just before we do, I'd like you to keep in mind that for this analogy, the fans represent the business. Now, this is not intended as a dig at the business. So any similarities that you might draw between the fans having strong opinions about how their team should play despite varying levels of understanding of how the game is actually played is purely coincidental. Okay, let's start with the forwards. Now in rugby, the forwards determine who win the game. A lot of the work that they do goes unseen, but they provide the platform for the team to play. They secure possession, look to deliver quick ball and suck in defenders to create space for the backs to score. They facilitate the backs, enabling them to play and creating opportunities. Part of their aim is to make it so that the backs have fewer impediments and less to think about, so they can, that way they can deliver at pace. And there's no substitute for pace. Fast beats slow. Now, outside of the forwards themselves, or those that have played in that position, few really understand what they do. Take the scrum, for example. 8 forwards from each side bind together to restart the game. Sometimes the scrum stays up, sometimes the scrum goes down. Penalties are awarded, sometimes even to the bemusement of the players and the commentators who used to play in those positions. Who knows what goes on in there? It doesn't matter what position you stand in, if you're outside of that scrum looking in, you can't see the detail. Now, as far as the majority of fans are concerned, they want to see the ball getting to the backs with a yard of space or on a beautifully timed and angled run so that they can cut the line and score. And they don't really care too much about how that happens. Now, don't get me wrong, there's beauty can be found in a rolling maul. Although I think if you ask the guy with the red scrum cap pictured here, he probably wasn't seeing the beauty at that moment of the game. But how does this relate to teams in our cloud-native organisation? Well, the forwards are the equivalent of your platform team. They determine who wins the game. They do this by creating a platform for apps to be created, deployed, and run on. In the platform era, their focus is to enable the stream-aligned teams, so they can self-serve environments to build, deploy, and run their applications. A difference we see between high and low performing organisations is that the platform team will also take ownership of applications that are suitable for reuse. They ensure their availability, run them very efficiently, and manage them as products. Now these could be data sets, functions such as authentication, or common configurations. Anything that accelerates those stream-aligned teams being able to deliver. So these are things that are they're assets that grow the more that they're consumed. They grow in value, the more that they're consumed. They accelerate time to market and reduce the cognitive load on the stream-aligned teams. This is the equivalent of the forwards creating space and reducing the amount that backs have to deal with, allowing backs to concentrate on making yards. Now you'll notice this description of the platform moves beyond the creation and management of a Kubernetes cluster. The platform team deliver what we call a platform as an interface. Again, if you'd like to understand more about this and how it brings organisational agility, then please check out my talk tomorrow on the keynote track. Most of the work that platform teams undertake is unseen by the business. Few understand the complexity of what's going on to provide the platform, and to be frank, the business doesn't really care as long as it exists and the apps are running. Okay, so I mentioned the forwards determine who wins the game, but it's the backs that determine by how many. They're the rock stars of rugby, playing in a position that affords them a better chance of preserving their looks. But it's not all spray tans and spiked hair. Their work is highly visible, flashy, and exciting. They work on skills to outperform their competition in terms of agility, speed, and power. The more of these features they can add to their game, and the better they are at performing them, the more devastating they are on the pitch. They can be made to look very ordinary if the platform isn't there, because they can't play if they don't have the ball or the time to use it. Ultimately though, their play gets fans off their seats. The excitement of seeing a back in space with the ball in hand is enough to electrify any stadium. The backs are equivalent to your stream-aligned teams. They build the products that determine how well and how you serve your customers. Work is highly visible. Speed to market, quality, effectiveness, and performance all rely on the unseen work of the platform. This is what the business sees and wants to see out there, putting points on the top line through value creation. Loose forwards and halfbacks provide a bridge between the backs and the forwards. They probe for opportunities to exploit and can often be experimental in their play. They direct the attack and are playmakers. They possess cross-functional skills and look to create or find space for both the forwards and the backs to operate. Enabling teams bridge capability gaps. They will investigate and experiment with new technologies to accelerate the adoption path for a stream-aligned team or multiple stream-aligned teams. An example of where enabling team is used would be when an organisation is first looking to adopt a trusted software delivery pipeline. Understanding the needs of both the platform and the stream-aligned teams, experimenting with technology, and building a working model that can be used as an accelerator. We also use these teams to accelerate the adoption of working practices and cultural traits that we see in high-performing teams. Essentially, they enable the stream-aligned teams to focus on value creation for their customers. Again, it's about reducing their cognitive load and allowing them to be faster to market, receive fast feedback, and be more customer-centric. As you'd expect, their primary interaction modes are facilitating and collaborative. Now, front row forwards are just a different breed. Their role is highly technical, and whilst they have become a more integral part of the modern game around the whole pitch, their primary role is only called upon for key moments to restart the game. They align with complicated subsystem teams. Again, their purpose is to reduce the cognitive load on your stream-aligned teams. They are responsible for building and maintaining elements of your system that require deep specialist knowledge. So an audio codec or a deeply complex financial algorithm used by many applications would be a great example of where forming a complex subsystem team would be prudent. You have very few of these teams, and they prioritize their work with the needs of the stream-aligned teams in mind. So the rugby team gives us, as near as possible, a blueprint for organising teams in the platform era. Bringing this all together, these 4 teams and interaction modes enable an abstraction and separation of concerns between the platform and applications that deliver competitive advantage and difference to an organisation. The aim of the platform team is to deliver a self-service platform and a common marketplace of applications that increase in value the more that they are consumed. Enabling teams and complicated subsystem teams aim to explore opportunities and handle areas requiring deep specialism respectively. These teams enable stream-aligned teams to reduce their cognitive load, focus on customer centricity, and deliver with speed and agility. This is how you organise for flow. So in adopting these team topologies that Matthew and Manuel so expertly explain in their book, you create high-performing teams and generate resilience and greater organisational agility. It enables your organisation to respond to the unexpected, be that internal competition or a pandemic. If you're interested in creating greater organisational resilience, then I'd recommend you check out my man Tom Geraghty's talk that he did earlier today. It's a winner. Achieving continuous flow requires clarity of purpose and lines of responsibility. This helps improve psychological safety, another key difference between high and low performing teams. It's how you separate concerns And as long as the interaction modes evolve to suit the challenge, any issues related to siloed behaviour are minimised. Sounds great, right? And I'm yet to come across a customer that doesn't buy into this approach, at least in principle. But the same alarm bell rings in their head. We're talking about organisational structure here. This isn't something we can change, or it's going to be way too hard to change, so maybe we should start somewhere else. And that's a perfectly reasonable response. I mean, show me the org structure and I'll show you the lines of power, status and resistance to change within the organisation. So how do you make the change? How can you even begin to adopt this approach and start to benefit from increased flow, speed to market and organisational agility? Well, I'll now share with you one of the ways in which we work with our customers to catalyse and adopt this change. It's not the only way that we do it, and there are no doubt other ways out there. But for the purposes of this talk, I'm just going to cover this as one example. For this change to stick, it has to become a movement. I've experienced a number of attempts, witnessed many more, and I'm yet to see a top-down implementation of a new organisational structure work and have the intended impact. For it to stick and deliver its aims, it's something that best occurs through an evolutionary approach and is thus best grown organically. The key is tangible proof, to show, not tell. We're dealing with a complex problem here. That's what we're trying to solve. It's deeply complex. And we know we need to change, as it's clear the traditional organisational structures where teams are delineated by skill set, architecture, development, operations, etc., just isn't working. They do not enable or facilitate flow, agility, or customer centricity. Instead, they create silos and make communication harder so it happens less. Conway's law wins. Something has to change. Change poses risk and cost, but the answer is not to de-risk that change through endless analysis. Is to adopt an experimental mindset and culture, to design the experiment, probe, sense, and respond. So we take the role of the enabling team, albeit with a broad remit. Through our residencies, we bring field-tested, proven open practices, product development approach, and accelerated technology adoption. We work with our customers to design those experiments and prove it out by doing the work. This way, we not only deliver against the work, for example, an application use case that's taking a slice of value from the monolith and decouples it using cloud-native technologies and methods, but we're proving out the approach at the same time. We show rather than tell. And we do it using the customer's teams matched one-to-one with our experts. Our approach is designed to in-source the skills, knowledge, and practices. This is about enabling and accelerating adoption so our customers start to create their own stories that they can tell internally. Internal and external marketing to trump success is an extremely powerful tool to catalyse that change. More recently, we've been running what we call dual track residencies. This way, we don't just help to build a long-lived cross-functional stream-aligned team, but we also support and enable the creation of the platform team. Whilst the stream-aligned team will take an application use case, the platform team will work to build the thinnest viable platform for the application to work on. They build day 2 operational practices, deliver everything as code, and foster site reliability engineering practices. Most importantly, by running side by side, they are automatically placed into a collaborative interaction mode. Empathy grows between the two teams, and the platform does what it needs to rather than what we thought it would need to. So we don't waste time and effort building features that nobody wants or values. Fast feedback is generated, understanding is fostered, and steps are taken on that evolutionary pathway to an as-a-service interaction mode. The outcomes de-risk further investment and provide the proof point necessary to catalyse change. So we've got lightning in a bottle. The customers prove they can do it and see incredible results. But that begs the question, how do we scale it? Well, scaling is achieved through the creation of a dojo. Through the dojo, additional teams are onboarded to grow the platform and to enable the delivery of products. Your application workloads to run on the platform. The dojo approach rapidly enables teams and ensures consistency of understanding, empathy, and growing of the underlying services. This is supported through training services to cover ongoing learning and mass understanding of the practices. Remember, Red Hat services exist to enable and accelerate adoption. So the key here is to create an internal enablement team within the customer. From seeding the dojo to running it, customer enablement teams are involved and eventually take over, allowing our coaches to step back and customer coaches to take over. The evolution of interaction mode continues and the flow within the organisation is continually improved. The change is grown organically and once taken hold, accelerates exponentially. Okay, so in the show notes for the talk, it said that there was going to be a surprising lesson that we could learn from rugby's referees. So I'll finish off with this and we'll move to Q&A. Now, unlike in other sports, the referee has clear authority on the pitch. They won't put up with any prima donna players back-chatting disrespectfully. Owen Farrell, sorry, excuse me. To quote Nigel Owens, this is not soccer. Referees are excellent communicators, often warning players to give them a chance if they're infringing in a minor way or are pushing the line too much, risking 10 minutes in the sin bin. The best referees are clear about the intent, how the game is to be played, and how they will ref it. They are consistent in their approach and are custodians of rugby culture, of teamwork, respect, enjoyment, discipline, and sportsmanship. They are there to facilitate the flow of the game and are able to use the advantage law to let the game proceed until advantage is gained or it's clear that no advantage was coming from the penalty and take them back to the original infringement. Of course, if you can charge into a ruck shoulder first into somebody's face, then you're going to see red, as you've left the ref without any choice and have become an impediment to fair play and player safety in the game. Something Ireland and Scotland have discovered over the course of this Six Nations at least. So importantly, the best referees show empathy for the game, and that enables flow. It's a complex game and they aren't going to get every decision right, but the best refs make good decisions, and where they can't, they consult their team. Touch judges and the fourth official help them to make those decisions as required. Let's look at leaders. High-performing leaders of cloud-native firms share many of these traits. They communicate the intent with clarity and ensure that shared understanding is achieved of that intent. Once achieved, they maintain that clarity and demonstrate their commitment to that by working to remove impediments to flow. To do that, they must develop empathy, an understanding for the problem space and the options that they have to resolve it. Crucially, they recognise that they don't have all the answers. It's perfectly reasonable not to be setting the agenda all the time. You set the intent, but how that problem is solved, you don't have to have all the answers. So they recognise that they employ highly capable, intelligent people who see the problem space from different angles. They cultivate a culture that encourages the best ideas and solutions to surface, wherever they come from. Finally, they challenge behaviour that tears at the culture that they have cultivated, so people can get on with doing their best work. This is how open leaders operate. Now, if you'd like to dive deeper into open leadership, then check out the wonderful Shabnor Shah tomorrow at 3:30. So there you have it. Rugby holds the key to team structure and interaction for the platform era. I just don't recommend that you start to try and take the chop tackle into the boardroom. I hope this was useful. If you'd like to discuss anything from today or share experiences, then please do come and speak to us at the virtual booth or get in contact directly. I also thoroughly recommend that you check out Matthew and Manuel's Team Topologies book. They've really nailed it. Okay, let's open for questions.